Hey guys. All right. So this is our last section that we're going to be reading this week. And we finally get introduced to our hero for the first time. So this is our introduction to Beowulf. So the living sorrow of Healfdene's son simmered bitter and fresh, and no wisdom or strength could break it. That agony on king and people alike, harsh and unending, violent and cruel and evil. In his far-off home, Beowulf, Higlac's follower and strongest of the Geats, greater and stronger than anyone anywhere in the world, heard how Grendel filled nights with horror, and quickly commanded a boat fitted out, proclaiming he'd go to that famous king, would sail across the sea to Hrothgar, now when help was needed. So Healfdene's son is Hrothgar, right? And so his sorrow is obviously what's been going on at his mead hall for the past 12 years. So it finally, the story makes its way over to Sweden, to the Geats, and Beowulf hears about it. So he's the nephew of Hygelac, and Hygelac is the king of the Geats, right? So Beowulf is like a cousin. He's nephew to the king, so he's kind of like a pseudo prince of the Geats. And he here kind of shows us that he's willing to go help people, right? He's willing to kind of uh, get people to help, or rather, he's willing to help people that need it. Part of it is for greatness. Part of it is also just because he's trying to be a good person. None of the wise ones regretted his going, much as he was loved by the Geats. The omens were good, and they urged the adventure on. So Beowulf chose the mightiest men he could find, the bravest and best of the Geats, 14 in all, and led them down to their boat. So here, one of those epic hero characteristics is that they have followers. Obviously, Beowulf has followers. He has 14 people who come with him to help him kill Grendel and save Hrothgar from the horror that has befell Herat. And again, we have this allusion to that pagan, right? Omens were good, that idea of fate, right? So that Beowulf should go. He knew the sea would point the prow straight to that distant Danish shore. So Beowulf and his men make it to Hrothgar, and a guard, Hrothgar's guards, bring him to Herat. And he is greeted by Wulfgar, one of Hrothgar's soldiers. And Hrothgar's excited because he knows who he is. He knows that he's a really important person and that he's really strong and really brave, and that he can probably help him with what's going on. Then Wulfgar went to the door and addressed the waiting seafarers with soldiers' words. My lord, the great king of the Danes, commands me to tell you that he knows of your noble birth, and that having come to him from over the open sea, you have come bravely and are welcome. Now go to him as you are in your armor and helmets, but leave your battle shields here and your spears. Let them lie waiting for the promises your words may make. So he allows them to enter Herat, or not Herat, but where Hrothgar is, in armor, but they have to leave their weapons at the door. So part of that is that they have to show respect to Hrothgar as a king. This is his home. You don't go armed into somebody else's home. So he's kind of, that would be that kind of social custom of the Anglo-Saxons. Beowulf arose with his men around him, ordering a few to remain with their weapons, leading the others quickly along under Herat's steep roof into Hrothgar's presence. Standing on that prince's own hearth, helmeted, the silvery metal of his mail shirt gleaming with a smith's high art, he greeted the Dane's great lord. Hail, Hrothgar! Hygelac is my cousin and my king. The days of my youth have been filled with glory. Now Grendel's name has echoed in our land. Sailors have brought us stories of Herat, the best of all mead halls, deserted and useless when the moon hangs in the skies the sun had lit. Life and light, or light and life fleeing together. So you'll notice that Beowulf starts by talking about how great he is. Boasting was a huge part of Anglo-Saxon warrior culture. It wasn't enough that you did great things; you had to tell people about all the great things that you did. This is obviously in opposition to the idea of like kind of humbleness of Christianity. But it's Beowulf, so he gets to do that. He is pretty impressive. So he has this nice little metaphor here where he talks about how when the sun sets, people die basically. So when light is gone, life also flees. This idea that, that's when Grendel comes to kill people. My people have said, the wisest, most knowing, and best of them, that my duty was to go to the Danes' great king. They have seen my strength for themselves, have watched me rise from the darkness of war, dripping with my enemy's blood. I drove 5 great giants into chains, chased all that race from the earth. I swam in the blackness of night, hunting monsters out of the ocean and killing them one by one. Death was my errand and the fate they had earned. So again, he's kind of giving us his credentials here. So Beowulf has fought in war, okay, dripping with his enemy's blood. He has killed not one, but 5 giants, or at least enslaved them. And he chased all of that race from the earth. So he's killed not just several giants, but all the giants that existed. And then he hunts monsters in the ocean, right? So we talked about this earlier, about how water is not a place where we're comfortable, because it's not our natural habitat. But Beowulf, by going into a monster's natural habitat where they have these kind of, strengths, he can still defeat them even when they're kind of on their home turf. So showing them how impressive he is. Now Grendel and I are called together, and I've come. Again, here this idea of weird, right? This idea that Beowulf and Grendel are fated to come to blows. Grant me then, Lord and protector of this noble place, a single request. I have come so far, O shelter of warriors and your people's loved friend, that this one favor you should not refuse me, that I, alone and with the help of my men, may purge all evil from this hall. I have heard too that the monster's scorn of men is so great that he needs no weapons and fears none. Nor will I. So Beowulf ups the ante here a little bit. One, he tells Hrothgar that he doesn't need his men to help him kill Beowulf. He just needs himself and maybe some of his followers, his own followers that he brought from Geatland. And 2, that since Grendel doesn't fight with weapons, he just kills things with his claws, then Beowulf also will not fight with weapons. Considering the fact that Grendel is so large that he can snatch up 30 men at once, the idea that Beowulf is willing to fight him in like unarmed combat is crazy. And again, it's part of that boasting. It's showing, Beowulf is showing off how incredible he is. My lord Hygelac might think less of me if I let my sword go where my feet were afraid to, if I hid behind some broad linden shield. My hands alone shall fight for me, struggle for life against the monster. God must decide who will be given to death's cold grip. So again, putting his faith in God, a nice Christian attribute, but the kind of warlike tendencies that he has going on here are definitely pagan and Anglo-Saxon, not so much part of that kind of Christian tradition. And the fact that he wants to impress Hygelac more than anything, right? He's worried that if he fights with his sword or hides behind his shield, that his lord, Hygelac, may not be as proud of him as he could be. Grendel's plan, I think, will be what it has been before, to invade this hall and gorge his belly with our bodies. If he can. If he can. And I think, if my time will have come, there will be nothing to mourn over, no corpse to prepare for its grave. Grendel will carry our bloody flesh to the moors, crunch on our bones, and smear torn scraps of our skin on the walls of his den. No, I expect no Danes will fret about sewing our shrouds if he wins. So Beowulf, even though he boasts a lot, he's also kind of a realist. He understands that if Grendel gets a hold of him, then there won't be anything to bury. Basically, so that idea that they won't have to sew a mourning shroud. These are these cloths that they wrap the dead bodies in. They won't have to do that because there won't be bodies to wrap because Grendel will eat them. Which, again, he's a realist. He understands the consequences of what he's doing here. And yet he's still going forward. So it just shows us how courageous he is and how willing he is to put himself in mortal danger. And if death does take me, send the hammered mail of my armor to Hygelac, return the inheritance I had from Hrethel, and he from Wayland. Fate will unwind as it must. So this is the idea of putting kind of importance to ancestral armor. So this is armor that was passed down from in his kind of family, right? So Hrethel was Hygelac's father, Beowulf's grandfather. It was passed down to Higelac. Higelac gave it to Beowulf, and now he is wearing this kind of great ancestral armor. Hrothgar replied, protector of the Danes, Beowulf, you've come to us in friendship, and because of the reception your father found at our court. Edgetho had begun a bitter feud, killing Hathlaf, a wolfling warrior. Your father's countrymen were afraid of war if he returned to his home, and they turned him away. Then he traveled across the curving waves to the land of the Danes. I was new to the throne then, a young man ruling his wide kingdom and its golden city, its golden city. Hergar, my older brother, a far better man than I, had died, and dying made me second among Heathdane's sons, first in this nation. So it turns out that Beowulf's father, Edgetho, actually knows Hrothgar. Edgetho killed a wolfling, and this would have been like another tribe in Geatland in Sweden. His clan was worried that if they allowed him to return, then the wolflings would have no other choice than to just kind of kill all of them. So in an effort to appease the wolflings, they didn't let Edgetho return home. So instead, he makes his way to Denmark, where Hrothgar gives him a place to stay. He gives him refuge. Hrothgar becomes king because his older brother dies early. So he becomes king even though he's a second son. I bought the end of Edgetho's quarrel, sent ancient treasures through the ocean's furrows to the wolflings. Your father swore he'd keep that peace, right? So basically he pays this off. So this is called a war debt or a blood debt. And basically it was the idea that if you killed somebody else, then you had to pay their family. And you would have to pay more depending on how incredible or wonderful this person was. So Hrothgar pays Edgetho's blood debt for him so that Edgetho can go back home. He sends all this like really nice treasure to the wolflings, and basically makes Beowulf's father swear that he will never create strife with the wolflings again. My tongue grows heavy and my heart when I try to tell you what Grendel has done has tell you what Grendel has brought us, the damage he's done here in this hall. You see for yourself how much smaller our ranks have become and can guess what we've lost to his terror. Surely the Lord Almighty could stop his madness, smother his lust. How many times have my men, glowing with courage drawn from too many cups of ale, sworn to stay after dark and stem that horror with a sweep of their swords? And then in the morning, this mead hall, glittering with new light, would be drenched with blood, the benches stained red, the floors all wet from that fiend's savage assault. And my soldiers would be fewer still, death taking more and more. Basically, Hrothgar is saying that his men would get drunk and be like, I can kill the monster. And then in the morning, they would just find Heorot covered in blood with these guys who didn't make it through the night. But to table, Beowulf, a banquet in your honor. Let us toast your victories and talk of the future. Then Hrothgar's men gave places to the Geats, yielded benches to the brave visitors, and led them to the feast. The keeper of the mead came carrying out the carved flasks and poured that bright sweetness. A poet sang from time to time in a clear, pure voice. Danes and visiting Geats celebrated as one, drank and rejoiced. So Hrothgar is going to feast Beowulf and his men before they spend the night in Heorot and potentially go to their deaths. It's kind of a little like, I'm assuming for Hrothgar, it kind of functions as a last meal possibility for them. But also he's trying to show Beowulf that he appreciates what Beowulf is doing for him and hopes that he can kind of take care of the horrible things that have been happening. Okay. All right. We will continue with Unferth's challenge in our next section, where basically a guy gets kind of drunk and accuses Beowulf of not being as awesome as he says he is, which Beowulf is not into. So we'll have that, and then he'll fight with Grendel. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.